How you doing, everybody? I am talking to Carl. It's been a minute since I had one of these little just discussion videos where I just give my overall thoughts. And there's been a lot going on in the news in the past week, going on two at this point. In recent events where the political debater, commentator, influencer Charlie Kirk was unfortunately assassinated over a week ago, and I didn't want to just make just a blatant video just right off the bat. Once we got at least a significant amount of evidence, and hopefully the killer was caught, so I can actually give my full thoughts on it. And obviously, this is repugnant. It was horrible. My heart goes out to his family and his friends. That at least a good chunk of them had to witness that right there in Utah, where he was trying to do one of his same debates they usually have at college campuses, and that's where the incident happened. The shooter is just a complete piece of shit, and definitely probably getting the death penalty. I think Utah is one of those few states that actually still do the firing squad. I'm not sure what death penalty is on the table, so we're still waiting for that part to unfold to see what's legally going to happen to him to the fullest extent of the law. But it is just a terrible tragedy, and it's not even just with America, especially America, but the world was rocked by this, because Charlie Kirk is one of those few Republicans that was willing to debate any and everybody to challenge any kind of points he made. And the first time I watched Charlie Kirk in anything, I was watching the Whatever podcast, and when whenever he pops up in in certain things videos that I've seen, I tend to be hyper focused, because there's a lot of stuff that I do agree with him on, a few that I don't. But irregardless, there's who's a God-fearing man who didn't really have any hate in his body, and despite certain people just taking little anecdotal clips or putting their feelings into it while just looking at an objective, logical lens, and just, even if you still don't at the end of the day agree, you can at least take the time to actually give a good faith listen and hear what he got to say, and you might be surprised at what you might agree with him than the flip side of what you don't agree with. And Charlie Kirk is more than willing to hear you out, and even if he at the end of the day can't convince you on his side of things, he didn't hate you or anything like that. That's one of the main reasons why this country was shook the way they did, because for a good period, even still right now, there's not many people that's willing to go into the lion's den and actually have a conversation with the other side, like we used to do. And there's so many people, a lot of them on the left, who, now mind you, the shooter came from a conservative family, but he was in college. Turns out the guy, I don't know, some speculate it's some kind of act of rebellion. I'm not sure. That's not something that really landed concretely on as to why he did what he did, but given the fact that he had a transgender girlfriend in college, it make it seem like he had some kind of I don't know, some kind of rebellious streak just to, kind of push against what he kind of grew up with in his house. And I'm saying it didn't seem like he was in some kind of abusive household. It seemed like a very normal conservative household, but he probably got severely influenced. Thinking because he had a transgender person that he was sexually involved with, certain things that Charlie Kirk might have said didn't probably sit well with this guy, and took that feeling to violence, and we landed in this mess now. And you think that would be like the worst right now, but no, there are certain people on the left who they try to top themselves pretty much, where they just, the body wasn't even cold yet, just hours after he was pronounced dead. There's a bunch of people on social media similar, gloating and praising this man's death, and it was just repugnant, despicable, vile, evil, and it's like something's not right up here with you. Now, not to say that you just because the man died or was killed, that you gotta all of a sudden gotta love the guy. Nobody's saying that. All you have to do is just either just say at least one or two things. Just say, rest in peace, or just don't say nothing. Those are your options. But it looks poorly on you when you just blatantly, arrogantly start dancing practically on the man's grave. All because there are certain things he said you did not care for. That trumps anything he said, because it doesn't matter what he said. At the end of the day, what you did, if you were one of those people that went out there and just was singing, songs about his death or whatever, it reflects poorly on you. It makes you the a-hole. And then before the week was out, there was a slew of those people who was doing that gloating end up getting fired from their jobs. Not saying that, I agree with that result, but a lot of them are part of companies that have guidelines. Things that even if you're not at work in your private time, you're still a reflection of that. And it's just, what do you think? You think you're going to have a whole slew of people that's going to agree with you on that kind of stuff? I'm pretty sure there are people in the country that might agree, but the smart ones won't sit there and put it out there for the world to see. They would have kept that crap to themselves in their heads or inside their homes where nobody would be none the wiser. But like I said, the arrogance of it, thinking that you wasn't going to suffer any type of consequence, is stupid. And now they want to, cry and whine about, losing their livelihood over freedom of speech and all the other stuff. And I know it's beaten to the ground at this point, but you are allowed to say what you want to say, but there are consequences behind that. There's plenty of people I don't agree with. There's nobody in this world you can agree with 100% of the time. There's going to be some stuff that you're going to disagree with. And you, just because you don't like the guy, you don't have to do that. And you can't just use the whole First Amendment like a bulletproof shield for any ramifications, because jobs, any career has guidelines and rules and regulations. Right now, that's why we got these late night hosts like Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert, who, lost their jobs. More recently with Jimmy Kimmel, because I just want to clear this up, because there's some people that kind of misconstrued a little bit about what he said on one of his last late night specials. When you think that he's like talking bad about Charlie Kirk, technically he was, was Charlie Kirk adjacent. What he was talking was specifically the shooter, but what was the issue is the fact that he was more so giving an opinion about the guy, but it was just some kind of inaccurate statement. Again, we call like verbatim, where it was something about the shooter, and it wasn't 100% accurate. But mind you, it wasn't like a spur of the moment, like we haven't got the full facts yet. It was like on like a Monday night, days after that the killer was caught. And we got some bit of information from the police reports and stuff like that. He took it upon himself to just, I'm pretty sure he had like a team behind the scenes letting know what the facts are, but he took it upon himself to say something that wasn't completely accurate. And that kind of mess keeps stoking the flames. And mind you, this is a guy who was on a show called The Man Show back in the day. You look it up, Jimmy Kimmel, I hate to use the term, but he used to be cool, but now it's like he's been to that, left-wing apple. And that's the biggest issue with these late night talk shows, and that was around for a good decade at this point, that a lot of them are very super left-leaning, and they kind of toe the company line kind of situation, where they don't give any kind of fair shake on anybody with opposing ideas. And that's mostly probably why he got cut, because the show wasn't been doing too great. Not many people were staying up watching late night shows. It was now people were also saying like, oh, they're infringing on his freedom of speech. Once again, he still works for these companies that owns the show. It was irresponsible for things that he said, but him and Stephen Colbert, like, once again, I miss the days of Johnny Carson. Now, I wasn't really old enough to see Johnny Carson show. I seen old clips when I was a young kid, like reruns and stuff like that. But Carson had this whole mindset of be completely impartial. He gets everybody on the show. He makes fun of everybody. But these late night talk shows of the modern era are not impartial. I think like Bill Maher is probably the most impartial in terms of late night. He does once a week, but he's probably one of the most impartial ones that we got. That's why he's probably the only one I actually watch, because he talks with everybody. He went up to talk with Trump, and Bill Maher is not I mean, he grew up like as a Democrat, but he's like more moderate now. I think that's how my worldview is right now, especially after recent events. Yeah, after what happened to Charlie Kirk, all the normal Democrats are skewing either moderate, or if they were already moderate, they go straight over to Republican side. Because especially after seeing all those videos of these so-called Democrats keep spewing more crap well after the man had died. It's just like, this is not my party that I remember. I can't be a part of this. That's the mindset of a lot of these guys. And the next coming election, it doesn't matter what decent Democrat that might run for the nominee for president of the United States. There won't be that much votes on that side, because you lost too much of your own people who were sane, and the only thing is going to be, the only ones that's going to be left are the psychos that you didn't hold in check from day one. And then you're going to be crying about, like, people didn't come out and to vote and blah, blah, blah. You chase them away. Because, whether you like it or not, the left have been, like, for, ever since, like, Biden first got in office. I'm not put it all on Biden, but, there's going to be some people out there who would. But it just, like, people aren't, like, putting people together. I think the last president actually did, like, a responsible thing and try to bring everybody together and was president for everybody and not just for one side that agreed with them. It was probably Obama. But ever since then, it's always just been, you're on one side or you're not. Or you're just like, you're just, either with us or you're against us kind of mentality. And there's some things that I agree with Trump on, and there's other things I don't. But I'm not sure it was because Moses was raw at the time. But when it was announced about Charlie Kirk's death, that would have been a good time where he tried to bring everybody together and try to break this nasty cycle of this tit for tat. The left and the right have been doing with each other. But bringing up Bill Maher is like, you could come to Trump about these kind of things and calmly and not antagonizing or pointing fingers or being like an a-hole to him. Just come on like a normal person. And Bill Maher, who's pretty decent dude, who's not gonna lie, he got so much crap from the left. That goes to show how the left is right now. The fact that they tell me, like, because Bill Maher commented on this, like, you changed, Bill. Like, no, the party has changed. Because those who are saying like him, or like me, or anybody who was considered like a Democrat, who grew up in a particular point where Democrats were like a common sense party, didn't hold or gatekeep certain the cycles who just want to glom onto them, glom onto that side, because it's like with a party of progressiveness and blah blah blah. But you didn't like take time to like, okay, yeah, we're the party of progressiveness, but we're not a party that ignores reality or common sense. We're not going to accept they-thems. We're not going to accept you identifying as like a cat toaster or whatever you want to do. It's like, no. We draw a certain line here. But there are certain people in the Democratic side who do not do that. And they end up going to keep losing and losing and losing because, they can't just, be a part of common sense and also work and understand what the, common man or the working man needs. Because you're too focused on super hyper specific minor people that doesn't amount to the majority. But you also need to start working with the other side. Whether you like it or not, we have to work together and socialize with one another in this country. And Bill and other Democrats or moderates tried to do that and got crap for that by the leftists. Isn't, and I remember watching Bill Maher's podcast, and he had Charlie Kirk on, and Charlie Kirk pointed out that there's way more people that was Democrat that came over to the Republican side than the other way around. What does that tell you? That you letting bad faith people in the Democratic side and have them take over. And it's not what it looks like anymore. And like Bill said, you can talk with Trump. You can talk with a lot of these Democrats. Not all of them are, just because they wear a red hat, not all of them are just evil racists. I'm not saying that there isn't like a few blunts and like check the bad faith actors in that bunch, but there's a majority. You might be surprised how many are just rational people that just, think Trump is like a good president. They buy into his stuff. I mean, it's like it doesn't make them bad. That's what you can't get through your heads. It does not make them inherently bad. Just like it doesn't make a person inherently bad because they decide to vote for Biden or whomever. But you gotta stop making it seem like it. Especially those higher ups like AOC or whatever, or Kamala Harris, make it say no, these people are evil because they did this and that and that. And it's like, that's your perception. Did you actually take the time to act without trying to antagonize or give certain jabs, in terms of personality or certain rhetoric, in like these late night talk show hosts got these little flippant little you say something rational, but you gotta give a little flippant little remark at the end of it all. And it's like, stop with the flippant remarks. Just be a normal person, and it'll go a long way as somebody like Nancy Pelosi, AOC, Jasmine Crockett, to say Trump actually is right about a couple of things. You take your ego out of it and just there's a couple of things he is right about. And it'll go a long way to show that, we're not going to treat him like he's bad. Yes, he's smart and has it right in a couple of areas. And just leave it at that. Don't try to throw it in also but he got some right on this. Don't forget, he ain't giving the black people this and that and third. And it's like, oh my God, just stop. Just leave it be. It's kind of like somebody trying to apologize, but then undercut it with a butt. That is that level of it kind of gets under your skin. You can't just take them over. And not saying there's people on the right side that can't just start throwing little jabs at Biden or Kamala Harris. They can just take their ego out of it and say you know what, Kamala Harris and AOC might have a point on this, that, and the third. They can easily take the first few steps to healing the country a little bit by just admitting there are certain things on our side that might be a little off, and vice versa. And might do you good by admitting that on the other side actually has a good point about this and that and the third, and vice versa. But I see a little bit more Republicans embracing that, especially with Charlie Kirk, than on the other side. And just being fair here. And people who, going back to Jimmy Kimmel, you could not, just you let these talk shows be silos or echo chambers for one side. while in being completely impartial. And that's probably why ratings gotten so low, because you only catering to one particular side, which is not that many. It's not the sum total of America. And keep in mind, people on the left who is up in arms about Jimmy Kimmel's firing, how's infringing on his freedom of speech and all that stuff. You didn't have that same energy when the left went after Roseanne Barr. Whether you agree with what she said, well, you definitely wouldn't agree, but still, she had the right to say it. Roseanne Barr. You went after, very recently, Sydney Sweeney for doing a jeans ad. The left was the primary ones. They like to call things like misogynists, Nazis, Hitler, racist, but bigots, misogynists, and it's they're the ones that primarily saying all this stuff. It ain't the right. The right is pretty much getting the brunt of that. You calling somebody who just did a jeans ad, Nazi propaganda. Just because, she's a hot blonde woman doing a jeans ad because sex sells has always been the case for, many generations, but because you feel like you was on the right side of history, or you think it was more progressive to see overweight or just malnourished or just whatever oddball looking people or trans or surgical scarred type of people on these little ads, thinking like that is is gonna sell this Jaguar or is gonna sell this TV or whatever, and it or a Bud Light kind of thing, and it hinders the company and the product they're trying to sell is not helping. It's not. And you wondering why American Eagles stocks shot through the roof, because they embrace what in general is embraced by a lot of people. We all, whether you want to admit it or not, like seeing hot people in ads to sell certain products. That is how it's always been. You're not, changing hearts and minds because you put an overweight, whatever pansexual, race, non-binary, paraplegic type of person on an ad, thinking some hyper demographic somewhere in Pennsylvania is feeling seen or whatever. It's dumb. And taking a right shift back to some level of normalcy. But then also getting back to people that gotten canceled because of their right wing beliefs. Chris Pratt got crap because he touts Christian values. What was that football player who was making a commencement speech at a college, talking about telling young girls that in the long run, what you would mean is pretty much embracing motherhood and being wives, because that will give you the most fulfillment. And technically, that is true. Because men and women, not all, but vastly, men and women, especially when they get into their 30s, are going to want to prioritize getting married and having children. When you're in your teens and your 20s, sure, having a boss babe mentality seems fun, and traveling and all this other stuff, because you want to waste your good years, messing around and while you're on these extravagant little trips and what have you. But at the end of the day, when Mother Nature and Father Time starts kicking your ass, now you're going to be wondering where all the good men at, and you are, pushing yourself out of the dating market for the kind of guy that you go want to be the father of your children. Ideally, the guy you want to be the father of your children, he's not going to want you more than likely, or not going to take you seriously because you didn't play your hand correctly. Then you also went after Zachary Levi because he decided to vote for Trump. He got so much crap from Hollywood for a good period of time because of that stuff. Tim Allen, even though he could have voiced Buzz Lightyear for that Lightyear movie, like he been voicing that character for the longest time, he's still, acting and still doing well. But no, you didn't choose that guy for that. You went for Chris Evans, who is Democratic and stuff, because he will just he looks good for the image and what you're trying to put out. Very recently, Snoop Dogg, talked about how he took his grandson to see the Lightyear movie and kind of taken aback. Him and his grandson got taken aback by the fact that there was a good lesbian with a child where there's no explanation about how they got it without a father involved. And it's just because it's permeating the zeitgeist with every little nonsense thing. It's too much. And of course, like clockwork, the leftists went after him. They went after Dave Chappelle because he made a joke about trans people. It's a joke. Okay? There's plenty of jokes by great comedians that not everybody's going to vibe with, but you try to get Netflix to boycott and cancel him, but that didn't work. Now you all butthurt about it. But it's just that, y'all have a nasty, not y'all, I'm talking about the universal leftist people, not everybody, but you know who they are. They got a nasty track record of trying to cancel people and all this other stuff and weaponizing cancel culture and weaponizing doxing people or shadow banning people, all that stuff for several years. It's always almost on the smallest thing. Gina Carano, who is became is a wrestler, but became an even bigger star because of the Mandalorian TV show, and just won a settlement very recently against Disney. Very rare that happens because of the unlawful firing, because she didn't buy into the whole non-binary stuff, which is let's be honest, a load of bull. Because I'm not saying there aren't maybe a few that actually are truly believe that, but I think a vast majority of them, let's be real, are probably just want to feel like they want a part of something or feel like a victim, which is another thing that Charlie Kirk is veering against. Hold on to this victim mindset to hopefully get some kind of favors or praise or some attaboys, or just coast on that that mindset. That wouldn't get you anywhere. It's a problem. It's a massive problem, and I think the reasonable Democrats out there need to take stock. A few of them have been, especially after the recent election, but definitely in the past handful of months, and definitely in the recent week with Charlie Kirk's death, they're taking stock, some serious stock into what's going on in their party, because it's okay, what the hell is going on with us? Who do we have that are just fanning these flames or just spouting nonsense because somebody didn't acknowledge somebody's pronoun? is getting too much at this point. So much so that you can't ignore it. It's not like, a one-off thing here and there every couple of months or every few months. It's on and on and on and on. And now it's like, going back to like people getting fired. There's like I was going to the comics and the video games, because I want to talk about the Ghost of Yote as well, which I'll get to that in a second. But not only people getting fired from their jobs, there's also getting to the comic book industry and the video game industries now, because a lot of them have been hiring activists as game developers and comic book writers in the past several years, where they prioritize the message over writing a good story first. Not necessarily you can't have a message in certain stories. That's not the issue. Reason people say that you putting too much emphasis on like with Superman's son doing protests now, rather than being a superhero film or comic, fighting, getting some new bad guys to be his particular arch enemies. There isn't just secondhand villains coming from his father. No, and he's got like a boyfriend and all this other stuff. It's just becoming this activism comics. That's what they are right now. It's somewhat in most video games now too, which in the recent year or two there's been like a notable change in that, thank God. But we've been inundated with a lot of that, where it seems like they want to, like the Suicide Squad game, where it's just like, where you got Harley Quinn, chewing out Batman and giving some kind of riot act about, his methods and beating up people, mentally ill people, and all this nonsense rhetoric before she kills him. It's just like, and then that Concord game where it's just like, all those characters look so whack because they want a body shame or something like that. That's why you got games like Expedition 33 doing so freaking well. It's already, what it is going to be nominated for Game of the Year this year, because the development team is like a splinter off from Ubisoft, because they got tired of the BS with Ubisoft, where they tone that company line of being so socially aware or activism, all this other stuff, and it's like, no, man. It's I'm pretty sure. I wish there was more people in Hollywood are like that. Where they just, people who used to write for Pixar or whatever, the animation or whatever, who got these little guidelines about like, we gotta push these kind of social moves or whatever into these movies, and it's like, and they just kind of just dipped altogether. What they should have done is made their own little company, and so we can actually have like good stories that is like, progressive but more organic in a way. Telling like a good Disney princess story without it being some kind of girl boss move trying to tear down patriarchy or whatever. And of course, like in the comic books, so many of them are either trans or non-binary. Just like a lot of them are just super activists. You look it up, like the writer of the Red Hood comic, which only got the first issue out right around the whole time of the Charlie Kirk assassination happened. She, just like the one of the lead developers of Ghost of Yote, end up getting fired immediately because they're just posting online about their excitement of the fact that he died. And it's just, how effed up is that? It's like, you got no, like, social awareness. It's like, you know, it's like, take a beat. It's just like, okay, this is effed up. Like, you can't just say, like, to yourself, like, I didn't care for the guy, but it's like, I'm not going to sit there and gloat about a man's assassination. You can just stay quiet. You didn't have to say anything. You gotta just kept it to yourself and move on. But no, you were so arrogant and got online and spout your mess, and now you out of a job. And you got in there to piss and moan about it because you think it wasn't fair. Well, tough tamales. You did that to yourself. You don't deserve sympathy. And that's what, like, that Red Hood book got canceled. A lot of people have been refunding their pre-order purchase of Ghost of Yote. That is going to have, like, some because it's going to be a month before that officially comes out. Bad timing, especially the lead actress who kind of, you know, because, you know, even before the whole Charlie Kirk situation, Ghost of Yote was in hot water for a lot of people. Not only did you kind of, you know, got rid of Jin Sakai, who was a phenomenal character, and just decided to go with getting like a female lead for no reason other than to score political social points. That's for real. You didn't have no narrative or good reason. Secondly, the whole plot of it seems kind of like not terrible, but very like by the numbers. But even still, reasonable people like me was still willing to give it a chance because we might be pleasantly surprised and might still, you know, rock the same way as Ghost of Tsushima would, Ghost of Tsushima did. But then, because I completely forgot how super of an activist the main actress who's playing this new character in the sequel is, and who, you know, ban people who criticize her in any kind of way, no matter how benign it is, completely blocks them from Twitter and stuff. But of course, she has like I don't know if she identifies as, of course she has a wife. That's fine and dandy. But it's just like, but then you're going to start posting online about your pro-Antifa? What is wrong with you? This is the big problem with a lot of these comic book industries and a lot of the video game industries. Why are you not vetting these people? You think just because it looks good on your little resume that you got like a good quota of people who come from all these different types of demographics, but you don't check, you know, the kind of stuff like you're a comic book industry, you're a video game industry. Your main goal is to not only sell product, but also make great stories that will be timeless. But you got all these activists, most of them got some kind of chip on their shoulders, and the others specifically want to influence the culture with their little woke mess that will be not timeless, but, you know, be frozen in time, where even if it's 20 years from now, they, you know, future people will look at like, oh, yeah, that was definitely 2022 there. No, look at something like Back to the Future and it's like, oh yeah, that's very 1980 something something. No, this is just like a timeless classic. You can watch it over and over again, no matter how long it's been since it was filmed. You know, get these people into these industries and they muck it up. Similar to with Star Wars, you let certain bad faith individuals into these roles and they muck it up. Same way with Marvel. You let certain people into these industries without some level of checks and balances, and look what happens. They muck it up. Because they don't really care about any of this stuff. They don't care about making a good Assassin's Creed game. They don't care about making a good She-Hulk show. They don't care about making a good Star Wars show. They don't care about making a good video game. They want to push some type of agenda to try to influence young minds to, like, because they just want to make, all the world just think like them, and that way is right and no other way exists. That is screwy. That's why I don't feel bad when they get their comeuppance. They did it to themselves. And the smart thing to do for like reasonable Democrats, need to do is takes pull together in Congress and your people who are choose to who are signed as Democrats or whatever, and it's like, okay, let's look through the records here. Who we need to get out of this mess, because they're messing up our stuff. Okay, they're not playing fair. They're sowing seeds of doubt. They're this is not good for the party. So that any business will take stock in who they hire, and it's like, okay, what kind of crap you say online? What kind of crap you believe in? Is it reasonable, or are you I don't know? It's saying you're pro Antifa. Yeah, you gotta get the boot. No, we can't have you there. Or at the very least, make them understand. Wherever you choose to believe, wherever you choose to do sexually with your partner, you check that at the door. Don't bring that mess in here. Okay? We're here to create timeless stories and run our business to make money. It has been is a creative business, and it's always working in symbiosis. But when the creative side try to overtake everything, it crumbles, or the other way around. They don't know, your little activism has no place here. It barely in this day and age have no place in a freaking college nowadays, because that is so screwed. But that's a whole nother can of worms. But yeah, man, I said my piece and what have you. It's just hopefully the people on both sides take stock, and we need to start okay, we need to take stock in ourselves and just weed out bad faith people, and so we can actually come to the table and talk, because this is getting too ridiculous at this point. People worry about some kind of civil war. It isn't going to be civil war of violence. I think it's going to be civil war on social media, just constantly tit for tat at each other like school children. It's like, oh, you did this to our guys, or we're going to do this to your people. Oh, you made our celebrity that we get fired, or we can get a celebrity that you fired for whatever little banana reason we can concoct in our minds that it seems rational or legal in some capacity. It's childish at a certain degree, but I gotta say, the large part that has fault, the majority whose fault that lays bare at their feet, is the left side. Let's be honest. They, by and large, started this. They're the ones that want to uproot everything. They let bad faith individuals screw everything up and be the loudest voices, instead of just the people that needs to just sit to the side and let the grown-ups handle things. They're the children that, not saying you ignore them, but use some level of discernment of what they're complaining about and decide what needs to be prioritized and what needs to be just forgotten in the ether. But that's just my thoughts. I mean, you can guys leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Once again, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. my deepest apologies for to your family, your friends, and it's like this did not need to happen. It breaks my heart, honestly. Nobody deserves it. No matter what political aisle you are from, nobody deserves this. It has no place here at all. And that guy who did that dirty deed is a scum of the earth. So whatever punishment the law deems necessary to inflict on him, by the full extent legally that is allowed, he deserved all of it. Because what he did was vile. And people who lost their jobs, what you do celebrating that stuff openly like that, what you did was vile, and you definitely deserve to get your job. You definitely deserve to get, I don't want to say you deserve to get fired, but you deserve some level of punishment. You openly, did this, so you openly got, canned. Okay? You should have just kept that crap to yourself. You can't really totally feel bad for you. I'm sorry. I just said, I don't feel bad and then say I'm sorry. But you know what I mean. It's like you did this to yourselves. But anyway, curious to know what you guys think. Please be civil and respectful. And I will see you guys later. So take care. Have a great evening. Peace.